Are you good, Kara?
I'm gonna check.
Okay.
There's a select building, so. Yeah.
Okay, very good. We are up to 1F, which is public comment, and we have one speaker that has signed up to address us tonight, so I would welcome up Mr. Joe Rasmussen.
Good evening. I am Mr. Joseph Rasmussen, and among other things, I am a resident within the bounds of SDM. I'm here tonight to speak about the homecoming updates that will be discussed. Specifically, I would like to discuss a very sensitive issue, that of building and ground security and the safety of our children, and the lack of all those things the evening of the 2022 homecoming dance.
Hold on, please. School safety is not part of our agenda tonight.
Will you be discussing the homecoming dance?
No, not as a matter of action or course of discussion of the board.
It's not on the agenda, no.
It's not there.
All right, well, let's look at the agenda for a minute. I'm speaking under 1F,
Okay,
my right to publicly comment, and I would like to address public comment.
go ahead.
I will. So at a recent board member meeting, I spoke on the lack of security at district buildings. Due to the sensitive and potentially catastrophic nature of this topic, I will not broadcast the district's vulnerabilities over YouTube during this meeting. However, I will provide a detailed letter to the board after I speak tonight. After learning about a free concert going on at the high school the same evening as the dance,
Hold on, you're still in school safety. We're talking about public comment.
and I will circle around, if you will, to public comment.
Yeah, but it can't. See, the reason
I
we
hold
have,
here, sir, a letter on district letterhead
yep,
from a public official, and you have taken me off my time and off my notes, and this is where the dictatorship of this
Hold on.
administration will not be tolerated anymore.
stop.
This is public comment, and I may speak freely at this public comment.
About items on the agenda, specifically.
And cite what state law says that I can't sit up here and speak about,
It's not a state law, it's our district policy.
okay?
Because A, we do not have to allow public comment at all. Okay?
Sounds like
I'm not
a South
suggesting-
American country to me, but
I
okay.
am not suggesting that we don't do that. However, to allow public comment, we have to operate within some parameters. One of those is to speak exclusively to items on the agenda. If you have anything else to share about items on the agenda,
I certainly have items on the agenda.
Then
Social
please.
emotional screener presentation. Looking forward to that one.
okay?
And it ties exactly into my public comment here, sir. So let me finish my address.
If you talk about items on the agenda, you are welcome, and I won't shorten your time. You can have 3 minutes, but it's gotta be about agenda items.
3 minutes starting now.
Give or take, there's one speaker tonight. I'm not anal about the 3 minutes, but please confine it to the agenda.
So 3 alpha, social emotional screener presentation.
Okay?
I would like to learn more about social emotional learning, things like that, because this school district administrator continues to put on district letterhead things that go against their standards. You just voted kind of contingently, like we're gonna get that 5th pillar built. Approve it, board, approve it. Approve the 5 pillars. And among those 5 pillars, no doubt, has to do something with social learning. And the lack thereof from this administrator is sickening. The fact that you as a board president would take me off my written comments on public comment
Joe, can we-
goes against those standards as well.
Pause just for a minute, Joe. I'm not trying to take you off your comment.
You absolutely took me off my comments. I don't
Because
think
you
were trying to
cannot
turn out
confine yourself to the policies that we've got set up.
the policies that are so easily accessible. The ones that you're gonna be discussing tonight.
The public comment policy, there's a copy of it at the door that you picked up. Read it.
I've read it 17 times and it's ridiculous.
I don't care what you think about it, that's our policy. If you can't conform to what the policy says, then you're gonna forfeit the rest of your time.
It also doesn't, during public comment, nobody has a right to call out individual.
You're addressing the board, so please,
He's done it repeatedly.
I'm gonna give you
Okay, well, let me go back and let's look at the standards against this letterhead that are in this policy right here in 5 Bravo.
what policy are you?
Dear Mr. Rasmussen, it has come to my attention that your recent interactions and communications with school district
Whoa, hold on,
staff
stop.
have been inappropriate,
Stop.
obscene, and inappropriate.
Mr. Rasmussen, please stop. I don't know how much more clear I can be. You need to address items on the agenda. If you refuse to do so, you're gonna cede the
So
rest of
this
your
evening,
public
the word
comment.
homecoming is not gonna come up in conversation? Because
Word-
it's mostly good.
Well, what are your,
So, okay, I got you right here. You said it's not gonna come up, it will not come up, it's on the record.
it's not in our part of our, action agenda items.
You didn't say action.
If
agenda.
Rich
You just
mentions
said
it-
agenda items, and it's on the agenda to talk about updates, and I'm sure the superintendent's gonna talk about the homecoming during his updates.
So you have a right
And if a
to-
student council, if
Okay.
a student council person were here, they would talk about homecoming.
You're gonna make me do something I'd rather not.
Please do, because it's on record,
You bet it's on record.
and we love to see that out there in the public.
I've given you 2 or 3 opportunities to conform, and if you refuse to do so, I'm gonna end your public
Yes, and
comment.
it's sad that you care so little about safety and security of our children, which was very much lacking at the homecoming dance.
Stop! Nobody here cares
Now,
what you
just
think
end your sentence
about what
there,
we,
sir.
okay, you're done.
End your-
You're done. Public
End your
comment is
sentence
over.
there.
I'm sorry.
Pause for a second. Thank you. In our policy, it states that the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. And we've already determined that it has to be related to an agenda item. And the presiding officer also may request an individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum.
Yes, and I will bring it up as an agenda item on a future board meeting, and we'll talk about it more in depth, because I don't want to wait until then, and that's why I'll provide the board a letter. But it is sickening in the,
Okay, you're done.
within
You're
the
done.
light of you.
I'm not gonna have you sit up there and call us names and to characterize us.
I
You're
didn't
done.
call you a name, I said it's sickening.
You're done.
I heard you,
Then please yield the podium.
I'm yielding.
Next agenda item.
Okay. We will move on. 2 is superintendent update. A is Red Hawk highlights.
We
Go
have.
ahead, Rich.
Admin team is going to, at the second board meeting of every month, share highlights from each of their schools. So our admin team could go ahead and line up and take turns sharing highlights. Thank you.
All right, good evening at
the K-3 level. We're busy under the pillar of teaching and learning. We're implementing our new literacy curriculum using our resource of wonders. And although learning anything new is tricky and difficult, our teachers are embracing that challenge. They're working together as they shift towards a different way of teaching reading, and we're super excited for the growth that our students hopefully show this year with that. Under the pillar of community engagement, all of the parent groups at the 4 K-3 schools organize some sort of back to school or meet and greet event for the families to meet each other and for the parents to meet all of the students' new friends that they have made throughout this month that we've been in school so far. So that's what's going on in the 4 K-3 world.
Hi, Cassie General, Northside. Northside, our 4th graders have made a really smooth transition. They are following routines, policies, procedures at the school like they're already in 6th grade. It's been wonderful. They are also learning how to use technology very well. It switches in 4th grade where they switch over to Schoology. And so our teachers not only teaching new content, but also how to interact with Schoology, and they've also been being extremely successful in doing so. Our teachers have been working extremely hard learning about UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, and it's really just how to make learning accessible and engagement and representation for all students. So that has been a huge help. We're working with CSIT too, who's providing our professional development there. We have a lot of fun field trips that have been coming up, such as like Old Grove, Wisconsin, starting next week. Our first group of 6th graders left for outdoor ed. And I'm sure if any of you have attended Milton, that's probably one of your highlights at Northside. So they left this morning and are very excited, so they're leaving in shifts. And probably what is the most exciting in my mind is our new Witten Wisdom curriculum. We have our new ELA curriculum at 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And it's been so engaging that our students are even discussing it at recess every single day. And they love to come up and talk about what happened new in the books or the texts that they're reading, as well as even sharing vocabulary, and that's been a focus of ours for a few years now. And it's just been really exciting to see, and our teachers are all in. The collaboration taking place during our PLCs for both math and reading. We're moving into a lot of our win time groups, so looking at our tier 2 instruction and designing those groups for kids who may need reteach, kiddos who are on level, and then also extension for kids who have already met those standards. So overall, it has been a very charmed start at Northside, and thank you so much for allowing us your time.
Good evening, Tara Stravinsky, middle school principal. My updates focus on buildings and grounds and operations a little bit because we've had some changes this year that have just been amazing. So our buses at the end of the day, we used to have shuttle buses that took the kids to the high school, and we had many behavioral concerns from kids who were not actually bus riders getting on the bus and then figuring out who goes where and transfer up at the high school. And this year, all students get on their home bus at the middle school, no transfer, and it is smooth. It is like one of the best operational changes at the middle school since I've been in one of the administrator roles, and it's just a positive end to the day for the kids, so that's been really exciting. Connected back to our cafeteria space, that with our updates at the middle school, one of the perks was that we could feed a whole grade level at a time, and it feels like this is the first year that we can really feel what that is like, because kids are having a quote-unquote normal school year start, and they're just having fun with one another. We've only had to be outside, or excuse me, inside for recess one day this school year, and so that break with kids outside, playing Foursquare, playing basketball, running around has just been this exciting start to the school year because we can interact with kids in just such a fun way. I'll echo what Kathy said about Wit and Wisdom. That's been a positive start for us, getting into some really positive teaching and learning with students. I've been in classrooms observing, and kids are just doing pretty rigorous work to begin the year in their ELA classrooms, and that's exciting to see. So overall, just having a lot of fun with kids and just feel like it's been a very positive start to the school year. Thank you.
You're up. Perfect timing.
Sorry. We can come back to it. It's okay.
All right.
Put it back. You were right. There you go.
All right. Where are we at? Give us a little update on the 9 to 12 world.
Do you work at the high school?
We're going to update. Thank you. Yes, I do. This last week, we've continued with the Chalk Talk screeners that we've talked about. That's students in homerooms who are taking the Chalk Talk screeners. We get a lot of ACT readiness data from that, and actually staff will be utilizing that data at the October 10th PD Day. We're also organized getting ready for that. We did have an outstanding homecoming week this last week. The game was well attended, and I want to give a lot of shout out to the Milton Youth Coalition. The bonfire was very well attended afterwards. There were over 450 students there. The folks that put that together created a new tradition at Milton. Students had a very, very high regard for that. So it was a very, very positive event. We're looking forward to, as we are getting into the last part of the fall season too, a lot of athletics will have a lot of at the end of the year, the end of the season, tournaments that are starting up. We're excited for girls golf, girls swim, and the last season games of football and soccer and the rest of the season. So that's the high school.
Beautiful. Thank you.
That was really wicked.
Indeed. Is that everyone, Rich?
Yeah,
Okay.
that is everyone. Thank you.
Yep.
The next agenda item under superintendent update, if I can go ahead and jump to that, is that last week was the state or WASDA school administrators fall conference in Madison. So I attended sessions on both Thursday and Friday, and I did kind of a broad overview of some of the sessions that were offered, but then there are some things that when we have some upcoming finance committee meetings and HR committee meetings that I can dive into a little bit more deeply with those groups when that topic is up. There's superintendents from across the state that attended. It seemed like a really high attendance. There were a lot of folks there. A lot of new superintendents across the state. There were over 100 school districts across the state that changed their superintendent position in the past year. They have a superintendent that's new to their district with a lot of turnover, and there are over 60 superintendents across the state that are brand new to the superintendency. So it was a nice opportunity for not just for those folks to get some information, but also to meet some people both around the state and in our area that are new to their positions. So, State Superintendent of Schools, Joe Underly, spoke to the group, and Governor Evers also spoke to the group, and their main theme was the important role of educational leaders, including district administrators, school board members, school level administrators, the important role that folks have, and reminder that public education is the lifeblood of many communities. So they both spoke very well on that topic. Then there were a large number of breakout sessions. I attended sessions on community engagement, open meeting laws, supporting student mental health needs, addressing controversial issues, a legislative outlook in the upcoming legislative session, the state budget forecast for the coming year, and district level budget planning. So some topics that we'll be talking about coming up down the road, but it was a very worthwhile session. And if we can jump from that to the last part of the superintendent's update, is just a reminder to the board and to the community that the Wisconsin School Board Appreciation Week is next week. So it runs October 2nd through 8th. Again, school board members and the school board as a whole have vitally important roles in the community. Providing leadership and governance for our school districts. So the work that all of you do individually and the work that the group does is very, very much appreciated. We'll be highlighting our school board in some social media posts next week during School Board Appreciation Week, and we brought some cookies for treats. Can't compete with Principal Stuckey's cookies, I'm sorry, but we did the best we could. So during the meeting or after the meeting, if you want to help yourself. So thank you all for the work that you do.
Very good. Any questions for Rich on any piece of his update? If not, thank you, Rich. We will move on. 3 is a presentation from Ms. Julia Garcinski, and it looks like Amber Forrester. So welcome, ladies. Social emotional screener presentation.
Thank you, Curly. All right, so we have our social emotional screener ready to roll. So I wanted to give you all an update as to what that's going to look like, and then just kind of foreshadow some next steps with dates that are coming up. So Amber is the school psychologist at Northside. She had a large part in kind of figuring out which survey we were going to go with. So she's going to talk a little bit about the journey, and then we'll go from there.
And a part of it, not a large part, we had a really awesome small group that started last year, student services for the district, broke into small groups to kind of address some key components that we wanted to work on pushing forward and improving in our district. And one of those areas was our social emotional learning. We already have the second step and those things in place, but we really wanted to find a screener for that. So we kind of talked as a team, we broke into our small groups, and we looked at our goal of finding an SEL assessment to guide instruction, monitor that developmental progress, and analyze the effectiveness of our second step program. So the components we kind of talked about, we said, hey, like there's a lot out there. We looked at BPI and they have 10 to 15 different recommendations for social emotional assessments. And we said, what matches Milton's needs and what matches the things we like to see here. So CASA aligned, so Second Step and Castle are kind of go together. Castle's just those 5 components of social emotional learning. So we wanted to have those in our assessment screener. We wanted it to relate and connect to Second Step. We wanted something that's a norm reference, so something that we can pull from other schools and classes and just make all those good comparisons. And then EduClimber friendly, and EduClimber is just our database holder that we use here at the district. And then a replacement for our connectedness survey, so just kind of address the school environment and the climate and areas like that. We kind of looked over all 10 to 15, we broke them apart, we met with different people who were like advocates or connection points at all of the screeners and the assessments. And after talking with different districts, we kind of not stumbled upon, but really looked into Panorama. Panorama was founded 10 years ago. It serves over 1,500 school districts, and it just hit all those key components that we really wanted for an SEL screener. And then I know you all kind of talked about this when Second Step came to be, but just why it's important and what we want to do with it moving forward. We know that SEL skills matter for students, for their academic achievement. Research shows for discipline, for increase in attendance, all these kind of key factors. And that these are specific independent skills that we can really drill down and find some supports for them here at school. And then the last point, just kind of that big picture, where teachers, adults, and staff, we have this awesome opportunity to work with kids and really build these skills that are not just for school, but for when they leave our doors and they graduate. So just that big picture to kind of wrap it all together.
Okay, so the what? So it is Panorama, our K-12 screener. It's an electronic survey. It's going to be given 2 to 3 times a year. We're going to kind of play around with when we give it. But it's basically trying to mirror when we do our other screeners, like iReady for the academic side. Like Amber said, it's aligned with the competencies and Second Step. And then we can receive detailed reports at each level, district-wide, building-wide, down to the individual students. And then we did purchase the part of the package that has the interventions or the strategies where we can help teach and support the skills, along with other resources for our teachers. Thank you. And then the why, so Amber was talking a little bit about this, but it's going to start to help build our MLSS. So we, just like that academic side, we have our universal curriculum, and then we have screeners to see if we have any gaps that we need to fill in, and then we have our tiered system to kind of help support that. So that's what this will do on the social emotional learning side of the triangle. And we know that social emotional learning needs are happening in our district as is nationwide. So this will just help support kind of our decisions on next steps for interventions for students. And then we linked here what the screener will look like. So those, if you click on the links, you'll have all of the questions that the students will be asked. This sample is for 3rd through 5th graders. We do have a separate sample for 6th through 12th graders. So up there it says 23 questions total for 3rd through 5th graders in the competency survey. So that is addressing skills like emotional regulation, self-management, social awareness, perspective taking, and then 17 questions for grades 3 through 5 for that connectedness piece, because again, this is replacing the connectedness survey that's been done for a while here. Just making sure that students feel safe and welcome, and that they have a sense of belonging within our district, in their schools, in their classroom, and then have a connection with that teacher-student relationship. And then the K2 survey is a teacher perception survey. So our littlest learners will not be reflecting, like self-reflecting on their social emotional skills, because they're still building their social emotional skills. So the teachers will fill out a perception survey, same areas, same competency areas will be evaluated, but then it'll just be on the perception of what's going on in the classroom. So those are linked as well. And then important dates to be on your radar. So we're going to host a parent night. That information got pushed out on Friday. There'll be some more reminders, and building leadership will be pushing it out however they communicate with their families. But for K-12 families, we'll have access to all of the questions for all of the surveys for people to view and have conversation about. I've had some parent contacts already, which has been great, just asking questions, and that'll help kind of drive the conversation a little bit more on the 4th. And then we will have options for parents to opt out of the survey, and that will be coming from me originally, and then the building leadership will push that out as well. And then our survey window opens on the 10th, and we'll have a 2-week window, and then we'll get together with the Panorama data team to really look at what our results are and figure out kind of how we need to take our next step. So that'll be a nice support from Panorama. Question?
For some of the feedback, where I'm looking at slide 4, where it talks about our data can be laid up beside national norm data and things like that. Are the resources they have, are they like, hey, if you're falling into this quartile, we suggest you do this, or is it, or you can interact with other schools that use this system as well and talk about best practices, or how does the feedback come for things that we appear to be excelling at, or that we can share, or conversely, things perhaps we could do better on, and soliciting ideas from other areas, other districts, or people that might have some feedback on what they've done in their schools and things like that?
Yeah. We're going to learn more about that on the 31st when we meet with the Panorama team, but those are excellent questions. I'm not sure of other schools around us that use Panorama specifically. I know that you guys did a lot of work on that last year, but they're based on the skills. So if we dive into the portal that Panorama has already, we can break it down by category, like self-management, for example, and they can have kind of what a typically developing student would, how they would be functioning with self-management. And then if they're not kind of at baseline, or just like kind of like the iReady, when they're not meeting standard, there's different strategies and supports and interventions that classrooms that can do, that a small group can be pulled, like from a school counselor, or even our school psych sometimes pull some groups, and they just focus on a specific skill to beef up that skill. So yes, we'll have lots of data at our fingertips, but we want to go slow and really be intentional with what our next steps are to kind of start to create that multi-tiered system of support. So that's really what we're trying to do, is we have step 1, now we need to build upon that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else?
Thanks for the info, for the presentation. Just have a question about that survey at the K2 level.
Mm-hmm.
Our teachers are very busy people.
They are.
We ask a lot of them, and their time is decreasing. How are we going to make sure that that time during their work data to those surveys?
Yeah, so each student is going to take about 2 minutes or less to complete. So we're hoping that we can utilize part of the PLC times on Monday. That's when we kept the survey window open for 2 weeks as well, to make sure hopefully that they had enough time to do that. And if it's not enough time, then we'll know that for the next time that we give the survey and the screener. We can make the window longer. We can do it during a PD day. All of these things kind of have to be planned and thought about, and we'll definitely reflect upon and then do better next time.
Okay, thank you.
I had a similar question, Julia, and I think you just answered it, but when you look at the survey questions for the K2 level, it appears that the teacher is expected to answer those questions for each individual student. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so I would echo what Rick said. I think it's important that teachers are given time to do that.
Right.
As an ex-elementary teacher,
oh, I know.
A retired elementary teacher, I should say. Yeah, the other grade levels are just have to give the survey, but the elementary level has to actually answer the survey themselves for each individual student, which will be time consuming.
It will. And giving them the questions ahead of time, or skills to think about ahead of time to try and evaluate as the weeks kind of are approaching the screener will be helpful, just so that they can hopefully be a little bit more efficient with, oh, yep, I saw that skill, they are secure in that area, or I know my student, I know this child, we need to beef up this skill in this area and then rate them appropriately. But I think foreshadowing that for them, and as they kind of feel a little bit more comfortable with what the survey is looking for, hopefully it'll be a little bit quicker.
Yeah, my question was just for the older grades, like 3 through 6 or 3 through 8. Will it be administered the same per grade level at least? Because some of the questions I think would need to be read.
Yes, they do have
So
options for that.
They don't just answer one, they might not understand the question.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's all fourth grade gonna read it to all of the fourth grade, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the same, so some kids get it, and some kids don't get it read to them or whatever.
Yeah, and the teacher has discretion as to if they want to read it to the whole class and just get it done in 20 minutes, or we can use our accessibility tools and have it read to the students who want it read to them and just kind of accommodate that way. But yes, all.
So it's consistent.
Yes, right. All things we will be learning and then tweaking if we need to.
How, going through the questions, there's always the fear that kids are like, yeah, I mean, sure, I'm always nice, right?
Yeah.
And then how
Valid.
do they reconcile that, you know, the folks who put this together with theirs, I mean, everyone has the tendency to wanna maybe sugarcoat parts of maybe things that they know deep down inside, perhaps they weren't respectful or weren't nice or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Do they provide some metrics as how, you know, is there some sliding scale on, you know, if it says this, what it really means is this, or how do you, I guess, how do you reconcile part of, everyone who takes a survey is probably more apt to lean on the side of what clearly is more appealing than the other side of it.
I don't know if there's a sliding scale or how to differentiate. Do you have any thoughts on that one? I was just gonna say, we as educators also are gonna have some input as to how we would evaluate the social emotional skills of the students in the classroom. We obviously have our universal curriculum and we kind of have standards already aligned with what we're looking for. So if I were taking the survey and I were to rank myself for what I thought was exceptional and you as my teacher would disagree with that, that's a point of conversation when we're going over the results to know how to move forward with, that was just kind of a outlier of a result and I would really like so-and-so to be looked at for supportive measures for social emotional learning. So we still will have those rich conversations, just like we do with academics, with our iReady data and our other screeners to say, we need to intervene, here's what I see in the classroom. Yes, this is what the assessment said, but this is one point in time, and I see the student all day, 5 days a week. So we'll take that information and make a nice comprehensive decision around it. But this will kind of help drive the conversation and see what we need for supports.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned next steps a couple times. My guess is there's probably a short-term strategy and then a long-term strategy once you develop some baselines and stuff.
Yeah.
So once you develop those and you have to implement a plan maybe for isolated students or whatever, is there parent notification?
Yeah.
Are they brought into the loop on that stuff?
Yes. They do have results. We don't know what the results look like or how that's going to be communicated just yet. Just like when you get your iReady results from a parent lens, it's a lot of information and some of the language and the lingo gets confusing at times. So we want it to be purposeful and we want it to be understood. And we'll absolutely have those conversations with parents that want to. But just like when a child has a reading intervention or a math intervention, we have to have that discussion with families and talk about what the intervention would look like, make sure that it's okay to do. So all of that will absolutely happen. I just really want them to mirror each other. That's what a multi-level system support should do. So absolutely, they'll be included in the conversation, but we don't know what that will look like yet. And if we give this screener and survey and we realize that we have a large need in the area of social emotional learning, then we're gonna have to address it. But I wanna go slow and be intentional about our decisions. But yes, bigger picture, that's probably, again, mirroring what we'll kind of have to do for our big scale. You're welcome.
Go ahead, Rich. Julia, you had shared that next Tuesday on October 4th is the parent night.
Yeah.
Can you share again what time that starts and where that will be?
Yes, thank you. That's going to be at Northside in the large group area at 6 o'clock.
And then if there's parents that have questions, but they're not able to make it that night, or they'd rather have an individual conversation, who should they contact?
Me. And I've had a couple of parents do that already, which is fantastic. I've got to think about things differently and make sure that I address specific questions and concerns at the parent night. So continue to reach out, anybody, if you have questions or concerns, and definitely we'll have the conversation and keep the dialogue open.
Anyone else questions for the presenters? Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The understatement would be there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
All right, we will move along. 4 on the agenda is an HR committee report. Mr. Mullen has the floor.
Thank you, Joe. HR committee met on September 14th. First item on the agenda was the 2022-23 teacher retention rate. The HR department has tracked staff separations and the reasons for leaving since 2015. Skyward data was gathered back to October of 2015 and organized into separations, retirements, and overall retention rates. A summary of these numbers are included in board docs, and you will see that there was a increase over this past year. In talking with the HR departments of other districts, our HR staff has found that other districts are seeing similar numbers as each district competes for the same limited pool of potential employees. Chris, could you talk a little bit about the exit interview process and what you learned from that?
Absolutely. Since I've been working in HR for the school district of Milton, we have always had staff reach out if they were leaving the district for various reasons. I meet with staff for retirement, and then they would come in and share their concerns if they wanted to meet in person. So those conversations would be had, and then I would share that information with the superintendent, and then the superintendent and I would talk to determine if it would need to be shared with the individual supervisor. In October of 2021, we started a Google spreadsheet, and it's a Google survey that is given to staff that are leaving the school district. And in that survey, they're asked various questions about their experiences in Milton, compensation, benefits, why they're leaving, why they came to Milton. So that information we've been gathering, and I believe to date we are at 18, maybe 19 responses from staff. I mean, support staff, administrators, teachers from that point till now. And really the goal is to provide HR with higher level information to share with the superintendent as appropriate.
So you're saying for them to have an exit interview, they have to request it? Because I was always under the impression that the HR office set that up with everybody who left, including retirees.
Retirees is a separate conversation, because in the retiree conversation, we talk about retiree benefits. If there was a particular reason why a staff member wanted to sit down and talk about their experiences in Milton, I have always sat down and talked with those individuals that reached out. But I've never mandated it or said you have to come in and sit down and chat with me and tell me why you're leaving. That's always been optional for those individuals.
That's not an impression I've ever gotten, okay. And then is the Google survey automatically sent to them, so it's just their choice if they want to do it or not?
That is when they put in the resignation, and that resignation or retirement is approved by the Board of Education. HR sends out an email that outlines all of their COBRA information. It also outlines, here's the survey if you choose to participate with that survey, or reach out to myself for an in-person interview or exit interview.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions about that?
Are you worried about any areas here? I mean, for other reasons, that worries me, you know, whether it's.
What, you're referencing the spreadsheet?
Yeah, is there anything that, like, you guys are just thinking we need to keep an eye on?
Well, you have, I'm sorry, Rich.
I'll kind of give a high level, and then you can fill in some more details on that too, Chris, is it's definitely something to keep an eye on. If you look at that spreadsheet, you'll see that the separation for retirement column with 8 people that retired this year is higher than it's been in other years, but it's not significantly higher than some of the other years. Where the largest increase has come from is in that separation for other reasons. So people who are leaving the district, and those fall into categories of people who are taking a job in another school district, or they're getting out of education but not retiring. And both us and other districts are seeing an increase in that area. More turnover than typical, not just in our district, but across the state and maybe even across the nation. And I think one of the things that we're seeing more, and it's mirrored in jobs outside of education too, is more people that are just looking for a change in what they do for a living. So it's people who have been in education and either are, sometimes it's going into higher ed. We had a few people leave to go into higher education. Sometimes it's to go work in private practice. So it is something to keep an eye on, and it's a trend that's happening across other fields than education, and it's a trend that's happening in other districts, but it's something that we want to always be alert to, and making sure that we are looking for ways to meet our employees' needs. We obviously want to bring in good people, train them so they can get even better at what they do, and then keep them. But we also know that there's times when we aren't able to compete in some areas with, whether it's private business or with other school districts.
So do we have all of our positions filled now compared to other schools in Rock County?
Can you clarify, are you talking specifically teaching staff?
Yeah.
Right on the staffing report, there is a recent resignation that we had received. But as of today, absolutely, we do have all of our teaching staff positions filled, but that, like you see that resignation, it's in transition.
So we're in good shape compared to other districts.
I will say that we do have a few support staff positions that are vacant, which is a little uptick than from what I'm accustomed to at this time of year, but again, we have that transition, people coming in.
And that was one of the discussions at the superintendent's conference too, was the turnover in other districts. And I would agree or affirm what you had asked Shelley, that in comparison to many other districts, both in our area and across the state, we're in a better position as far as having staff in place, whether that's professional certified staff or support staff.
I think more of a comment than a question. When I read through this agenda item, I found an article from the Society for Human Resource Management in March, and it was regarding the Great Resignation and what's going on nationwide. And in 2021, almost 48 million people quit their jobs nationwide. And so, to Rich's point, people have been looking around, and one of the things that concerns me as we go forward is making sure that not specifically us, but school districts in general have the tools to make sure that the positions we offer are competitive with those in the private sector. I feel like we have a lot to offer people in the field of education, but at a state level, being conscientious of, do we have, as an industry, the tools necessary to attract and retain talent? Because again, this is something that isn't specific to any one industry, but every industry. Hopefully, as we look forward, we'll continue to have the tools we need to fill positions and retain positions with people.
It's going to be vitally important that we have that conversation, and other districts are having that conversation too. We're going to run that conversation through the finance department, so we'll be talking about resources and what we have available, what those long-term trends look like in revenues coming from the school district, because a lot of what we're able to do, at least financially, and we know that financially isn't the only reason that people take jobs or stay in the job, but we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to maximize our resources so we're competitive financially with other districts and with outside options for folks.
I think why it's really critical is like a business, for instance, a restaurant, if they're not adequately staffed, can close on a Monday and a Tuesday and just say, we don't have staff to be open, but we don't have that luxury as a school district. So it's pretty critical that we have teachers in classrooms ready to teach kids.
All right, any other comments on that topic? All right, moving on, the next item is the 2022-23 Benefits Advisory Group overview. Just a reminder, the Benefits Advisory Group was created in 2014 as a way to inform and receive feedback from staff about employee benefits. It includes all kinds of staff, administrators, professional staff, and support staff. The committee feels that, the HR committee feels that it is important to keep having the Benefits Advisory Group meetings in order to keep open the lines of communication with staff regarding benefits and any potential changes or updates. The committee also sees value in Al Yeager and his staff sharing with the group what benefits are being offered in comparable districts. Recently, the meetings have been held remotely, but we will be going back to in-person meetings. We would like to bring some new members to the group also, hopefully from all employee groups. We will try to have a board member at each meeting, but this is not always possible as they're usually scheduled soon after the school day ends, but we will do our best. There is not a meeting scheduled yet, is that right, Chris?
That's correct.
Okay, but we're gonna get one scheduled, hopefully.
We're gonna be looking at that soon.
Okay, all right, okay. That'll be on the radar. Any questions about that?
Rick, may I add one thing too?
Please.
We did have a number of people retire this last year that were Benefits Advisory Group members. So we are going to be putting out an email later this week, just asking to see if there's interest in joining that group. So more to come out from HR later this week.
Okay.
And on that topic, as we're gathering folks to be on that Benefits Advisory Committee, it's important that we have representatives from multiple employee groups and also from various stages in their career. So it's not all veteran teachers, not all new teachers, not all teachers, that we have a good mix. So HR department will be working on that coming up and getting that set up.
And are those meetings open to anyone, Chris?
Yes, they are.
Like they might not be a member of the group, but any teacher or any support staff member could come.
They could, and one thing that we do ask, and in the past what we've done is shared out that the meetings build upon each other. So if you as a staff member wanted to come to meeting 2 and 3, you may have missed what was outlined in staff in the first meeting. So when we share it out with staff, we ask that you try to commit to that and be able to attend all of them, because it's hard to move things forward if you're constantly going back to square one trying to bring everybody up to speed. So yes, they are open if you wanted to come, but please try to make as many meetings as possible so you're up to speed on what those conversations are.
That makes sense, thanks.
Any other questions or comments on that topic? Okay, thanks. Next one is employee handbook update. In August 2021, the HR department looked into outsourcing the creation of an all-staff handbook. USI was chosen as the best company to do this. In November of 2021, the HR department received the first draft of this handbook from USI, made some edits to align with our current practices, and gave this back to USI. HR received the second draft back in July of 2022. HR is currently reviewing the second draft and will be submitting these updates back to USI to get it finished up. The HR department hopes to bring the updated handbook back to the committee and to the board later this fall.
We're hoping to get those next round this fall, and then fingers crossed, we're presenting it to you to take a look at, and then hopefully approval.
So do employees have a current handbook for them to use to follow?
They do, yes, absolutely. Both teachers and support staff, they're 2 separate handbooks. We're looking, like we had talked last fall, condensing those into one. So we're working on that draft. Like Rick said, a lot of our practices, but we also want to make sure that our board policy also aligns, and that handbook doesn't contradict policy, and policy contradict handbook.
Any other questions on that? All right, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for HR. Joe, would you like to go on policy?
I would indeed.
The Policy Committee also met on September 14th. The first item on the agenda is the list of the first reading of the Neola and other new policy updates. The list is included in board docs. The draft policies are also in board docs, but in a little different place than they were before I emailed the board about this last week. If you still have any questions about how to find those, please either let me or Carly know. There is one new policy, 1421, criminal history record check and employee self-reporting requirement. This policy outlines the procedure for checks on staff in order to watch out for the safety of both our students and staff. The policy also states that the staff should report to the district administrator within 3 days of any arrest or other offense other than minor traffic offenses. Many of the other updated policies contain updates to comply with federal Title IX laws such as non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity, prohibition against disability discrimination in employment, and employee and student anti-harassment policies. The compliance officers and coordinators who oversee these policies and possible investigations have also been updated since we've had some turnover in our administrative staff. Any questions or comments on any of the first readings? Next up is item B, discussion and possible approval adoption of second reading of the Neola policy updates. This one does contain one policy 5451.01, the Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship. This has some changes that the committee is recommending come to the board for final approval tonight based on the time-sensitive nature of the policy. Milton High School currently has 3 recipients each year of this scholarship. With the change away from the weighted grading system, it will make ties for the scholarship much more likely and even probable to occur. This policy spells out how the ties will be broken. The high school administration would like to make sure that students and families are aware of how any ties will be broken at the end of the first trimester. So that is why we will be recommending the final approval of this policy tonight. Any questions or comments about any of the things up for second reading? Hearing none, we're going to do this in 2 motions. First one, I'm going to make a motion to approve and adopt the policy updates as presented, with the exception of policy 5451.01. We just have to separate that one out.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Motion from Rick, seconded by Mike, as you heard, to approve and adopt the policies here up for the second reading, with the exception that Rick outlined. Any questions on those? I see none. All in favor of approval signify with aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Those policies are adopted.
Okay, then I would also like to make a motion to approve for final approval tonight, policy number 5451.01.
Second.
Thank you. So a motion from Rick, seconded by Shelley, to approve policy 5451.01, which, just for procedural practices here, has not had a first reading, which is our customary process, but we're going to adopt and approve this one because of the time-sensitive piece that Rick outlined. Questions on the policy?
I just have a question. Will the students be contacted also, just so they know that are in the top 3 or 4?
I'm seeing a head nod.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that are watching it.
That'll be part of the communication.
Okay.
And that's part of, that's the main reason that we want board approval on that as soon as possible. And we're bringing that tonight for board approval so we can get that information out to students and families as soon as possible. Makes sense.
Joe will not be voting on this particular matter.
Abstention noted.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the policy? All in favor of approval signify with aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That policy clearly passes.
That's all I had, Joe.
Thank you very much. That exhausts 2 committees worth of work. Thank you, Rick. New business, Ms. Sarasuki has made her way to the podium for letter A, which is the summer school update. Welcome.
Thank you. I think Carly's going to be pulling up some pictures for you to see, because while you've got a brief memo summarizing our amazing program, I still believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to keep my comments short, but I will share some things that were not in the highlights in the board packet. We have 106 people who work, 107 with me, to make summer school a thing. So that's a workforce. That's a lot of people with summer employment. We can be very proud of that. We have about 22% of our teachers are not Milton teachers during the school year. They work in area school districts and then come back to us every summer to work for us for summer school. So that's a good proportion, a fifth of our teaching staff. Our support staff, we're 100% of our, with the exception of one support staff member, they're all Milton folks that work with us all year long and then help us out during summer school as well. So just really proud of our staff and grateful to them because it is extra employment for them and we couldn't do this wonderful stuff for children without our staff. So just wanted to make a note of that. This year, I'd like to just give a shout out to Jeff Spivak and the high school coaches and trainers because they reorganized our athletic performance program. We used to have a summer weight training program, which we said was open to every sport, and it really was, but it certainly was a bigger draw to our football team and harder for all athletes and all students interested in lifting weights to be a part of. And then we had a girls' weight training program. And what we've done is revamped it to where we have an intro to weight training at the middle school for those middle school age students. And then we have a summer school athletic performance class for 7th through 12th graders of any sport or athletic who have some background in lifting and conditioning work. And that was a huge, huge success this year. We drew in so many more student athletes, and that is something that could not have happened without the leadership of Jeff and all of those coaches in countless planning meetings to make that happen and supporting that progress. So I feel like that was more accessible, more inclusive, and super proud of that. We did a survey last year, a couple surveys. We surveyed our community, our families, about what people were looking for in summer school, as well as our staff, and that helped shape our work this year. We are always looking at comparables with how we pay our teachers, and that's something we'll continue to do annually to keep trying to attract and retain summer school staff. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that happen to be able to make those 19 days for the enrichment classes. And then clearly we do some programming with band and weight training and such through the whole summer. So just a lot of behind the scenes things that usually start in about October. So not too long from now, we'll be planning again. And just really proud of the progress. The bottom line is this is part of our third Friday count. And so on the table on your board packet shows that we did grow our FTE from 64 to 70 FTE this year. And so that's a good thing. The way that works for our third Friday count is that we can only take credit for those students that are residents. So we had close to 1,600 students participate in at least one class for summer school. Some did 3 or 4 different programming options. We can only count 1,422 of those students because we had about 160 students who are open enrollment students. So we go through those attendance sheets and we cannot count their membership and their attendance. We include them because we believe that there are students, it's the right thing to do. We're not allowed to not include them, but it is, we're happy to include all of those students. And we did have 5 non-residents who paid tuition to come and participate in our summer school program. But we can only count for the third Friday count those students who are residents. So 1,422 students, and there's a whole formula I won't go into that breaks it down. Then they take the 3-year average of our summer school FTE, and 40% of that we get to add to our third Friday count. So having that number grow from year to year is a good thing, not just for our summer school program, but to help our funding for the whole school district. So proud of that. And at this time, since I'm not going to reread the memo that you've had an opportunity to see, are there any questions about summer school that I can answer?
You had mentioned that there's a number of students who would probably participate but can't because of transportation to and from daycare. Is there an opportunity to somehow facilitate something there in the future, or is it logistically just not possible?
Yeah, the district can't provide the transportation for summer school from the community to the school. We could work with those daycares to see if they were interested in providing their own transportation. We did have a local daycare once do that. They passed the cost on to the families as part of their summer tuition costs for the daycare. They stopped doing that a number of years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago. They stopped busing. So it is something that we would love if the local daycares would provide that transportation service. We would get a lot more students involved. But I think that's something too it's like competing in some ways because they provide programming themselves, which then is a cost to the families and then part of their business model. So it's a tricky thing that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
Anything else for Sarah? Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Awesome program.
Thank you.
All right, B under new business, as Ms. Carrie Bradley is making her way to the podium, is actually part 2 of our short-term borrowing that I think Carrie's going to fill you in on. This is discussion and possible action on resolution authorizing a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for cash flow purposes in an amount not to exceed $1,900,000. Take it away, Ms. Carrie.
All right, well, you kind of led into it for me, but I want to, if you bear with me, just take a couple minutes to talk a little about cash flow borrowing. As you identified, this is our second step or the next step in the process. At the last meeting, we looked at our historical borrowing and noticed that in the last 16 years, we have needed to borrow 15 out of the 16 years. When we worked on the cash flow projections, our estimates identified that we need $2.3 million for this year. And that's related to the pattern of aid and tax revenues that we have and how that doesn't align with our expenditures going out through payroll and vouchers. So when we also looked at that, we noticed that November was the first time where we start running into a shortfall. And so, again, this year, we have decided to take the 2.3 and split it in 2. The 400,000 will steady us through those periods where we may experience a shortfall and kind of shore up our cash reserves. And then the 1.9 million is a line of credit. And the goal is to hang on to that line of credit for the shortest amount of time possible that we have to. And that will get us through November, and then there's some other potential shortfalls as well beyond 400 million. But really, our goal with the line of credit is to hang on to that money for the least amount of time possible, so we pay the least amount of interest on those dollars. So in your board information for tonight, we are finishing approving the line of credit with First Community Bank. We go through a process where we solicit bids from our local banks, and we use bond counsel to do so. And the information is in your board packet then, with the recommendation to go with First Community Bank. Do you have any questions?
Am I correct in in my personal education on this subject, 1.9 million, and the reason those figures arrived at, the 2.3 is split up into 2 pieces. 1.9 is the maximum we can statutorily do on the line of credit. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Yeah. So that's why the 400 and 1.9 split is there.
And I also, having that 400 throughout the year, right now as we're estimating what our tax revenues are going to be. We're estimating what our state aids are. So, having that throughout the year as a cushion is also, I have referred to it so I can sleep at night. But next year is next year, and we'll take a look again at next year and see how things unfold.
Historically, I mean, is this a conversation we have every year, most years? Like, are we typically doing some of the short-term borrowing about every year?
Yeah, actually 15 out of the last 16 years we've done
It's
short.
not like headlines tomorrow, we're gonna read, the school districts, on money, we've been here before.
It's a common practice, it's a practice in our district. And it really is related to, if you remember in the presentation, our resources come from our local tax levy, the majority of which we will get in August and January. Those are our two biggest payments for those. Our state aid payments, we get in September, December, and June. The largest is in June. And as we have talked about, right, the payroll is shorter over the summer and then it's steady throughout the school year. And then we also tend to have larger voucher payments or accounts payable checks in July. And so our spending patterns don't align with when the funds are available to us from those two sources. Good question, thank you.
I really want to make sure that folks are alert to that because Dave's question wasn't about the district not having enough money. And it isn't a case of when you look at our revenues and our expenditures for the year not balancing. But Carrie referred back to the presentation from last meeting, and I know there's some people here and maybe in the audience that weren't at the last meeting. So I asked Carly to pull up that slide. And Carrie, is that the best one that demonstrates that timing of revenues and expenditures coming in at different times?
Yes, and then the orange line is when the expenditures will outpace the revenues. And so another thing to think about too is that we have our budget plan, and we have a balanced budget, but this is about cash in the bank at a point in time. And at different points in time, we're waiting to receive some of those revenues that we're going to get throughout the year. Is another way to think about it.
The state equalization aid doesn't come in equal monthly payments throughout the year. There's large chunks that come in September and then not again until December and then March and then the majority or the largest chunk in June. So it really is a case that our district and many districts across the state need to take this action so that to meet those peaks and valleys, when you have a valley of revenues, you continue to have those expenses, and it's to meet those short-term needs. It's not uncommon in our district or in other districts. Really, the only districts that typically wouldn't need to do this would be if they had an extremely large fund balance, so that they could weather those storms. So that's one of the advantages to districts keeping an extremely large fund balance, but there also are some disadvantages to that too. So again, that's a conversation that we've had from our finance committee up to the board.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for cash flow purposes in amount not to exceed $1,900,000 pursuant to section 67.12, subpoint H, subpoint A, subpoint 1, and approve the temporary borrowing from First Community Bank in an amount not to exceed $1.9 million at an interest rate of 4.19%.
I'll second that.
All right, I guess I heard John first, sorry, Shelley. Motion from Mike, seconded by John, as you just heard, to approve our short-term borrowing from First Community Bank there. Questions on the motion? I see none. I'll roll call vote this, starting on my left. Shelley?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Joe is yes. Rick?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
I'm abstaining from voting.
Abstention noted. And John?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Carey. Okay, new business C is action on 2022-2023 open enrollment alternative applications, the summary of which is included for you folks. It looks like 1 in and 2 out.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-23 open enrollment alternative applications as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion from, I'm sorry, who seconded? Dave? Okay, motion from Rick, seconded by Dave to approve our open enrollment alternative applications. Questions on those? All in favor of approval signify with aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That passes. Thank you much. Miscellaneous A is our monthly staffing report. I'm sorry, it's not monthly necessarily, but it's the current staffing report.
I'll move to approve the staffing report as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion from Jennifer, seconded by John. Did you do that? Dave, you two guys sound too similar. I'm gonna have to start paying closer attention. Seconded by Dave to approve our staffing report. Any questions on it? All in favor of approval signify with aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you very much. Staffing report is approved. B is customarily gifts and donations.
I'll make a motion to approve the gifts and donations with gratitude.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion from Rick, seconded by Mike to approve our gifts and donations. I see a $16,160 total. So as always, with the gratitude of the district, questions on those? All in favor of approval, say what? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That clearly passes. And I believe we're up to meeting dates. Mr. Dahman?
Yeah, we have our next regularly scheduled board meeting on Monday, October 10th, same time, same location. And then we have 3 different upcoming committee meetings. We have one scheduled for Thursday, October 20th for the Finance Committee. Again, Finance Committee on Thursday, October 20th at noon. We have to schedule and filling out a potential date and time based on responses from folks. So this is a joint HR committee and finance committee meeting. So we're looking for both of those committees to be meeting together on Wednesday, October 5th. And based on responses from the folks that we heard back from, 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. was a time that worked for the folks we heard from. John, I don't know that we heard back from you. Do you know
I never got an email.
Okay. Does Wednesday, October 5th at 10 a.m. work for you?
Yeah, that'll work.
All right, so the 6 committee members for the HR and Finance Committee are available that date, and I also reached out to Shelley, since she's the only board member who's not on one of those 2 committees, to invite her to also attend if she'd like. So again, that's Wednesday, October 5th, the joint HR and Finance Committee meeting. It's next week, Wednesday, and we will have that here at district office. We'll have to look and see that it'll either be in the upstairs conference room or potentially the new first floor conference room, depending on space and availability.
And we said from 10 to 11, right?
10 until 11 a.m.,
Thank
yes. And then the one that we need to schedule, we're looking the week of October 17th for a curriculum committee meeting. So curriculum committee members, we have 4 curriculum committee members, Shelley, Mike, John, and Jennifer. We're looking for the week of October 17th. We would like to have Ryan Ruggles will be at that meeting, but also Principal Bill Horn and 1 social studies teacher. So doing it maybe after school might be an ideal time for that. And wondering about availability that week of October 17th. So we could either look at schedules now and see what people have, or we could reach out and see what availability folks have. I don't know, Shelley, what your
I
week
could
looks
do
like.
the 17th, 19th, or 20th after school.
The 17th, 19th, or 20th work for other committee members?
I think probably the 17th would be best for me.
Just to know, we already had that meeting on the 20th. I mean, not that we couldn't have another one, but.
Yeah, but the joint meeting is on the 20th for that week.
I could do the 17th if that works.
Jeremy, what time would work? I know that's our PLC day too. What time would work for you and the?
On the 17th, we have parent-teacher conferences as well, but that's we can actually make any time work.
And it's to look at the district's library plan and new high school courses are the agenda items. Jennifer, how about your availability?
It'll depend on what time, on the 17th.
Okay.
I'll make any time work.
How about for one of the
Yeah,
social
what about-
studies teachers?
They'll be available. I just have them step out from parent-teacher conferences.
Okay.
They'll be okay.
No rhymes.
Would it be better on a day that's not parent-teacher conference?
We can make that.
So usually the 19th work. The 19th will work for me, again, depending on what time. That's a
It's
Wednesday.
our second night of parent-teacher.
I'm hearing Jeremy say that Monday, the 17th will work.
And it has to be that week, the 17th.
We want to have it prior to that following board meeting. Yes.
I can do the 17th.
Should we do this 3:30 work, Jennifer? 3:30 on the 17th?
We'll make work. Yep.
John, and then that works? All right.
Where will that be at?
That will be here at the district office, and we'll send out the specific spot for it.
3:30, correct?
3:30 PM.
If we're asking a social studies teacher to step into it, wouldn't it make more sense to do it after high school?
We'll send out, we'll check on space availability and send something out.
And if we're impinging on their folks' conference times, it might be.
And save some time for them.
Yeah.
Then they can join for their portion too and jump back out a little easier. We'll look at high school availability.
Just a suggestion. I'm not even on the committee. It's dawned on me. All right, are we good with committees?
Yeah.
And as usual, I have exhausted my agenda.
I move we adjourn.
Second. Moved and seconded to adjourn. Rick and pick something out there, John. All in favor? Aye, aye. Safe travels. We are adjourned. Technically, I can